Thank you for joining me for another episode of Awaken Empower TV. I'm your host, Ethan Fox. Today I'm joined by Krish Murali Eswar from India. We speak about some of the unique forms of yoga that they're teaching out of India and that have now proliferated through centers around the world. In particular, Kundalini and a form of yoga called Kaya Kalpa, which we discussed on earlier shows and also in channeling sessions with Michaela Sheldon. We discussed how Kayakalpa is one of the ancient forms of yoga that are coming forward into our modern times. And Kayakalpa in particular is being taught as a method to extend your life indefinitely, if you so choose, using the sexual vital fluids in our bodies to channel them to a higher purpose. And in so doing, increases health, vitality, and longevity. We also discuss the how the sexual vital fluid is exchanged during partners and relationships, and also the awakening of consciousness and how that's happening at the present time and where we're going as a world in the future. I also want to mention that there's a bit of noise in the background of this particular show because there's actually a celebration of Diwali in India right now, and so there's a lot of noise and firecrackers and things like that. So I apologize for the noise, but it's a very celebratory time for them there. And so I'd like to bring on my special guest, Krish Murali Eswar. Hello, Krish. Welcome to the show. Thank you for joining me on Awaken Empower TV today. And so where are you joining us from today?
Hi, Ethan. Thank you so much for having me on your show. I am right now in Bangalore, India. So thank you so much for connecting across the season, perhaps the other end of the world.
Yes, no, it's a pleasure having you. I've been watching your work for a little while and very interested in what you're doing there and bringing it out to our audience as well. Tell me, let's start by talking a bit about your background, even prior to the work that you're doing now with Kundalini Yoga and Kaya Kalpa and things of that nature. What was your life like before all of that started?
Well, I should start with a little bit of a family background, I guess, that could set the tone for us to understand where I came from. I lived in a small home. In fact, it was a one-room home. My father was a railways clerk, Indian Railways, which is in the Guinness Book of World Records for being the largest employer in the world, but certainly not the best paymaster in the world. My father was, started out as a junior clerk and retired as I think a senior commercial clerk or something like that. And when he retired, his monthly income was around 3,000 or 4,000 rupees. So Indian rupees. So that's today's dollar rate would be around $50 a month. So my mother was a school teacher, and she was a little better educated than my father. She did complete her schooling. That's the high school she completed. My father didn't even complete the high school, so often they would fight with each other, and the fight would end up by mother saying that, look, I'm more educated than you. So having said that, we have three of us. I have a younger sister who is of course, been more brilliant in academics than I ever was, and my younger sister, who was also equally brilliant. And we had just one room, so if it rained outside, it would rain inside. And we didn't even have a fluorescent light for the first 30 years of my life, 25 years of my life. We didn't have a fan for the first maybe 10 or 15 years of my life. And so it was extremely difficult circumstances that my parents grew us up with, but they educated us. And they worked very hard. And I don't remember my father ever taking a day off in his entire work life, except on 3 days in a year or so when the government declared holidays. That's how hardworking he ever was. And my mother had a school job, and then she would conduct a private tuition for children who needed help. Oftentimes, she wouldn't even charge any money for these kids. We were used to having very little things at home, very little means to meet our needs. But once we got educated, and we all sought out for better jobs, and we looked for better means, economic means to grow up. But in my college, I lost my way because I suddenly had freedom in my college, and I didn't know how to use that freedom. And I started smoking. I had fallen into occasional drinking and lots of movies, of course. In India, you grow up with a lot of movies, so we end up going to a lot of movies and lots of friends, and wasted my time. So I had my first semester mathematics, second semester engineering drawing, third semester field theory, fourth semester circuit theory as arrears, things that I didn't pass. I couldn't even qualify on these with the minimum marks. And when I came to the fifth semester, I was like, I don't know if you know the Indian history, there was a king who kept attacking a temple for 13 times. So I was like that king, right? So who would attack the exam hall for 13 times in like 10 days or something like that. So my friends got hold of me one day, or that was, I think, on August 29th, 1984. And then they basically gave me an ultimatum and said, better stop all these nonsense and start focusing on your education. So I looked for someone who could help me to improve my concentration power, and I met my guru, Sri Vedatri Maharishi, in Coimbatore, in Tamil Nadu, in India. And my life completely changed since then. I learned the Kundalini Yoga. My Kundalini was awakened by a simple touch of the guru, and it came to my Ajna Chakra, and that helped me to improve my concentration power so much that in the subsequent semester exam, which came within about a couple of months or so, in I think maybe about 3-4 months later, I think, December or so that came, I cleared all my arrears, all my failed papers. I just cleared in one shot, and I even got distinction in Fortran 4, which is a programming language that we all learned at that time in the college. So that really changed my perspective of life. That changed my life itself. That changed the direction that I was taking in my life. And ever since, I have only grown from strength to strength, and I have been able to get rid of my weaknesses. I've been able to keep a lot of my unnecessary, unwanted desires out of my baskets, and I've been able to pretty much get rid of all the negative thoughts and negative emotions in my life. I'm now married. I have a fairly successful business enterprise. I head one of the largest affordable housing construction company in India. It's completely sustainable. We manage water within, we manage power within, we manage waste management within. It's a kind of a zero waste campus that we are building with about 7,000 homes in a city called Coimbatore, which is where I studied from, but I live in Bangalore. We also have another project in Chennai, which is going. We also have within our platform about 7 different entrepreneurs, all social entrepreneurs. In fact, they're not just social entrepreneurs, but they are socio-environmental entrepreneurs. I teach Kundalini Yoga now, which is really is my passion. It's really what I want to do for the rest of my life. In fact, I will hopefully in the next about 6-7 years or so start reducing my my focus on the business side of things, and hopefully I would have earned some amount of financial freedom to completely focus my life on the spiritual journey, the spiritual freedom. My entire goal, not just my goal, my family's goal also, is to work towards world peace through individual peace. So that's in short who I am.
Tell me about your guru a little bit. Well, how did he come across this teaching that he shares with others now? And there, I know from what I understand, there's centers all over the world that are teaching these techniques. How long has he been studying this, and how did he come across that?
So I met him, like I told you, when I was looking for a guru who would help me to improve my concentration powers and help me to focus my mind more on my own energies and help me to get rid of these unwanted, unnecessary habits and improve myself and really help me to succeed myself. So that when I was searching for a guru like this, and I met a junior of mine, and who was initiated by Sri Vedatri Maharishi, my guru, and he introduced me to Swamiji, and that's how I met him. That's how I got to know of him. So there is, of course, a long story about this. My Swamiji. He's written an autobiography of himself, and there's a life explanation of his, which is written in the form of the books. He has published about 75 different books in mainly 2 languages: Tamil, which is his mother tongue, and English. Of course, many of his books have been translated into English. There is even one book called The Journey of Consciousness, which is published by the Macmillan Publishers, if I'm not wrong, in the UK and in India. And he was born as a son of a very poor weaver's family. This was in early 1900s. In a small village outside of the city of Chennai in Tamil Nadu in India. Beyond the 3rd standard, he could not get educated because his parents did not have enough money to educate him. So he became a weaver at the age of like 7 or 8 or so. And ever since he has been a weaver. He then realized that he would never be able to get out of poverty just doing hand looms with his manual loom. So he started learning English, and he taught English to people in 1920s or so. And then went to Chennai to look for a job somewhere, and he worked for some government company. I think it was Indian Postal Services, if I'm not wrong. He worked there for about a few years. Then he started his own cooperative union. He got hold of about 1,000 hand loomers to come together, and he would supply a few things, and he will take back the finished goods from them. And then he would sell it to large buyers in and around the country. So that way he actually became one of the richest and one of the largest handloom cooperative society in the country at that time, so in 1930s and 1940s. But then the Second World War happened, and he lost it all. And after he lost it all, he decided to focus on the spiritual side of things, and he concentrated on setting up a World Community Service Center, which now has spread throughout the world. We have over 2,500 centers across the world. We have about 20 or so centers in the United States. We have a few centers in UK. We have centers in Netherlands. We have centers in Australia, in Japan, in Malaysia, in Singapore. Of course, in India, we have over 2,200 centers in India itself. We have about 65,000 teachers in the world, trained and certified by our Guru Sri Vedatri Maharishi. Teachers like me. I got certified by him in 1987, and ever since I have been teaching. Wherever people called me, invited me, I would go and do it. And I never took any money for what I did. All the donations that I would collect would go to Swamiji's trust. This is how most of the centers work. I don't think there is anyone who depends on the meditation work, the spiritual work for their sustenance or livelihood. So this is more a voluntary work that we all do. We have in Bangalore, we have about 30 or so families that have come together, and we have donated about 10 hectares of land just outside of the city of Bangalore. With the help of all these trustees, we formed a trust, and we're hoping to build a temple of consciousness. So it is Swamiji's dream that there must be a temple of consciousness where we worship consciousness rather than worship an idol or an image or anything else in the world. He just felt goodness is God. He just felt consciousness is God. So he taught us a method by which our own consciousness develops from within us by focusing our mind on our own life force. And he practiced every single method that he taught us. He practiced till the last breath. So he lived and stood there for us as a live example. I was very fortunate to have been associated with him very closely. And I have watched him from very close quarters, and I have learned a lot from him. And today I attribute all my success and my family's peace and success to Swamiji, my guru, and his methods.
And how old is he now?
He's no more. He is. If he was alive, he would be around 100 years old now. He just passed away about 4 or 5 years ago.
Tell me about, so you teach primarily, well, I understand the Sky Yoga, which encompasses, from what I understand, Kundalini and Kayakalpa Yoga, correct? Can you describe these teachings a little bit?
Sure. The Sky Yoga system essentially has 4 simple pillars. First one is the raising of the Kundalini and focusing your mind on your own Kundalini life energy, which is called as the Simplified Kundalini Yoga. The second one is the introspection exercises. Swamiji believed that the 6 large, sinful actions, what we would call in India as kama, krodha, lobha, moga, mada, macharya, from anger to vengeance and to immoral sexual passion and so on and so forth. So these 6 temperamental modes have to be neutralized in the first place. We must allow goodness to develop from within us. So he developed a simple method of introspection, which is based on the belief that through the power of auto-suggestion, you can superimpose new thought patterns, new behaviors, new characters, new imprints over the old harmful, hurtful imprints, and thereby develop a new personality for yourself. And today, of course, there are a lot of scientific proof that is emerging from Harvard University to London universities and so on and so forth, which proves beyond doubt that yes, indeed, even the genes can be manipulated and changed with the power of meditation. So introspection is the second pillar. The third pillar is the simplified physical exercises. Swamiji believed that without taking care of this body, you will not be able to take care of your life, you will not be able to take care of your mind. So he learned all the different forms of yoga on himself. He experimented it on himself for several years. Then he taught it to a few of us who would then volunteer and try it out and go back and give him feedback on what effects do we see on our body. Then he perfected the system over a period of time, and he created 7 into 7 simplified set of exercises that anyone above the age of 7 to the age of 70 can very easily practice. It takes about half an hour for you to do this on a regular basis. The exercises are believed to be based on regularizing your heat circulation, water circulation, air circulation, life force circulation, and magnetic circulation. So those are the preventive methods on which these exercises have been based upon. So that's the third pillar, the simplified exercises. The fourth pillar is Kayakalpa Yoga. For centuries, both scientists and the philosophers have been preoccupied in finding answers for 3 questions. Why do we age? Why do we fall sick? And why do we die? So Kayakalpa Yoga is a systematic, logical viewpoint into, or even a search or a quest to find answers for these 3 questions. Logically, it also, or consequently, it also tries to find answers for 3 other questions. How do we not fall sick? How do we improve our immunity? And how do we withstand the aging process? And how do we postpone death to one's wishes? So Kayakalpa Yoga is the 4th important pillar on which the Sky Yoga system is built on. So all of these can be learned from the age of 6. Simplified exercises can be learned from the age of 7, but once a person achieves physical maturity, a man or a woman achieves a physical maturity around the age of 14 to 15, then the Kundalini Yoga is taught, the introspection techniques are taught, and then the Kayakalpa Yoga is also taught.
And from what I understand, it's about the age of 14 that do all these yogas involve working with the sexual vital fluid, or is that primarily just Kundalini and or Kayakalpa?
So the simplified physical exercises is essentially a set of physical exercises which are designed to regulate the blood, heat, air, life force, and the magnetic circulations in your body. So it really depends on it depends on two primary methods. One is the posture, another one is the movement, the hand exercises, leg exercises, the backbone exercises, the neuromuscular exercises, eye exercises, and so on and so forth. So that's nothing to do with anything other than just the body and how each and every cell can maintain health and improve immunity and so on and so forth. So the Kundalini Yoga is essentially raising of your own life force energy from the three-dimensional center of your body, which is essentially the tailbone of the human vertebra, to the Agna chakra, which is in between the eyebrows connecting to your pituitary gland, 4 inches behind the eyebrow chakra. So that is done usually in the past. These raising of the Kundalini or the awakening of the Kundalini was done with 3 primary purposes, primary methods. One was through the breathing control, pranayama techniques, that is. The second one was through chanting of a mantra, repeated chanting of the mantra could awaken your Kundalini. The third one is through images or transcendental methods. So you visualize a sunrise or a moonrise, or you imagine a flower, you imagine various other things, and even an idol. You imagine an idol in front of your mind, and then you close your eyes and fix your mind on that particular imagery, and we hope that this Kundalini will awaken. But what Swamiji did was to simplify this process. What he did was he taught us and a simple method by which we magnetize our hands by closing our eyes and focusing our mind over our hands, our fingers, closed our hands, and focus our mind on it. But we immediately feel a pulsation of our own life force pulsating within our hands. So the hands become magnetized. Once the hands are magnetized, then we get the power to use these hands as a magnet to raise the life force of the aspirant sitting in front of us. So we touch the tailbone, and through the backbone, we raise it to the Agna chakra. And as you can very easily guess in this process, the men are trained to give initiation to the male aspirants. And there are women teachers who are specially designed to train women on this particular yoga, simply because we come from a society in India where we are not too very comfortable with the physical touch between opposite sexes. So we like to honor the integrity of the sensitivities of women particularly. So therefore, we very strictly follow that only male teachers give initiation to male, and women teachers give initiation to female aspirants. So that's the Kundalini Yoga. The introspection techniques are really mental practices. You sit in silence, and in silence, it's only a ritual. External silence is only a ritual. But the internal silence is what you are looking for, what you are working towards. And that happens by constantly reducing the frequency of your brain from an active, wide awake beta stage to a calm alpha level to a deep state of consciousness, which is the theta level of frequency, to the ultimate almighty state of mind, or the samadhi state of mind, which is the delta level of frequency. So from about 21 you come down to 14, and then 8 to 13 is alpha, and then from 4 to 7 is the theta, and from 0.5 to 3 cycles is the delta level of frequency. And this is possible only through inner travel, only by observing your own thoughts, observing your own mind, and getting rid of unwanted, unnecessary, distractful thoughts from your mind. And if you try to control your mind, the mind becomes like a monkey. It tries to go all over the place. So what Swamiji taught us is to understand the mind. Once you start to observe your mind and understand the root cause of your thoughts, and then the mind will start to calm down. It's like having a good friend within yourself. Okay, and there is a child within each one of us, and the child wants our attention. The fact is, most of us are not trained to listen to our own mind speak to us. So introspection exercises is essentially a set of exercises that helps us to focus on our own mind and analyze our thoughts and get rid of unwanted, unnecessary, harmful thoughts and replace them with harmless, pain-free thoughts. Second, moralize our desires. Again, we cannot live without desires. We need desires. If I'm hungry, I have to eat. So wanting to eat is a very fundamental biological desire. But the point is, if I can stop within the limit, within moderation, that's good for me. If I lose control and if I start eating too much, or if I eat wrong kind of food out of habit, then it could hurt my body. So how do you get rid of these harmful desires? Swamiji taught us a method. And of course, the most powerful and something that I have gained a lot in my life is to neutralize anger. You cannot control anger. There is nothing called as controlling anger. It's very difficult to control anger. Once you get into the mood of anger, into a rage, it's impossible for you to control your mind. So you need to only learn how to prevent anger, how to avoid anger, how to neutralize anger. So it's a very simple, powerful technique that Swamiji has taught us by which you neutralize your anger. The fourth one is eradication of worries. And the fifth one is to focus on who you are, who am I. And so there are simple techniques that are taught in the introspection techniques. And the last one, which you touched upon in the beginning of this question, is Kaya Kalpa Yoga. Kaya is body, Kalpa is immortality. Kaya Kalpa Yoga, therefore, is body immortality yoga. Now, it is believed by the Siddhas, by the saints, particularly those who lived in the south of India, including our Swamiji, that the food that we eat, a part of it becomes juice, a part of it becomes blood, a part of it becomes tissues, a part of it becomes muscles and various other nerves and other things. A part of it becomes bone, a part of it becomes marrow, and finally, the last portion of it becomes the sexual vital fluid. Please understand, when we talk about the fluid, we are not talking about liquid. It's two different states of physical matter. While the liquid is like blood, juice, and so on and so forth, the fluid is essentially totally a different matter altogether. So Swamiji believed that in the cerebrospinal area, the last vital portion of the food that we eat in our body becomes this vital fluid, which gives the immunity power for each and every cell in the body, throughout the body from head to toe. And it also is the insulator for our life force particle. So you should really imagine this to be it's like gravity, right? It's like the gravitational fluid that scientists now are now researching on. Is there a fluid state beyond the universe? We really don't have a scientific answer for this question, but the Siddhas, the Rishis, the saints, the self-realized souls such as our Swamiji has attempted to put it in simple words for us by explaining that it is indeed part of our own genetic center, that this fluid exists as the God consciousness fluid that is controlling our entire lifespan, which gives us the immunity, which gives us the longevity that for us. Now, but this fluid exists even for a child, and it starts to grow in intensity over a period of time. After the age of 14, the physical maturity is attained. There is a little bit of excess fluid that Swamiji believed gets accumulated in the cerebrospinal area, and this fluid starts to descend from the brain to the sexual gland. When this fluid descends, there is an automatical biological desire or an instinct that is developed in the human body to want to excrete this fluid. Therefore, Swamiji believed that such an urge to excrete this fluid is essentially the sexual urge. And he then, of course, did a lot of research for several years, and then discovered a simple method through various people's research and help, that he built on a very simple system whereby this fluid can be recirculated, brought back from the tailbone area around the sexual gland to the cerebellum area, and over a period of time, when we recirculate this fluid, then it increases immunity, it increases memory power, the brain power, the clarity of mind. It certainly helps you to withstand the aging process. It probably even helps you to postpone death to suit one's wishes. So that's really focused on the sexual vital fluid, but all other things have direct benefit on the body and the mind, and of course, your spirit.
Now, in Chinese medicine, traditional Chinese medicine, it's believed that human beings are born with a certain amount of life force, or what they call jing, which is given by the parents based on the parents' health and age at the time of the birth of the child. And that jing is depleted throughout their lifetime based on their lifestyle or diet or whatever the case may be. And very few foods actually, other than certain Chinese herbs, supposedly rebuild that jing. And they also believe that the jing originates in the kidneys, and that the kidneys produce this life force. The health of the kidneys is really essential to determining one's longevity. So is the sexual vital fluid you're speaking of, is that originate in the kidneys at all? Is there any connection? No.
Not at all. It is, Swamiji believed that this originates at the cerebrospinal area.
Mm-hmm.
But he believed that it's part of the cerebrospinal fluid.
And both men and women, in Chinese herbalism, they believe that the sexual vital fluid, which they don't refer to it as that, but is for men, they lose this life force or jing through excretion of that fluid throughout with sexual activity throughout their lives. But women lose that life force through the menstrual cycle. In your understanding, is that the same, or are women losing it through sexual activity as well?
Well, what Swamiji told us is that there is some amount of the sexual vital fluid that is excreted when a man ejaculates. Similarly, there is some amount of vital fluid that comes out of a woman's body as well. However, it is also true that women do lose some amount of this vital fluid when they go through the monthly cleansing cycle.
And so what happens with women and men when they reach a certain age? For example, women go through menopause symptoms where they have hot flashes and things like that. Is that because, what causes that? Is that because the body suddenly has more life force energy and it is causing the overheating? And is the sexual vital fluid still depleted even after that age?
See, the body, as we understand, for a woman, basically goes through a whole lot of hormonal changes. The nature has designed as a gift the woman's body for procreation. It is really divine work for which a lady is born in this world. So, of course, men can definitely feel jealous of this capacities that women have. But what happens is, therefore, the women actually undergo a lot of pain, a lot of difficulties, which is, in a way, a bit disheartening and painful for someone to look at it, especially if you have daughters like what I have. And when they go through the monthly cycles and they go through a bit of a suffering, and you really feel very sorry for them. But that changes around anywhere between 40 to 50 when they go through this menopausal problems. But I also believe that this in the recent times, maybe in the last 30, 40 years, maybe even in the last 20 years, the women's reproductive health has really taken a big toll, and it's going south. It's really going down. The reason is, I believe, I suspect there's a lot of chemical that is being induced in various food and other things that a woman eats. But otherwise, there are scriptures, there are incidents that have been recorded in the past where women have even delivered children, where they've just delivered a pain-free delivery, and after a few minutes, they were able to, take care of their own umbilical disconnection, and they were able to carry their child, and they could walk back home within a few minutes. And you don't hear of such stories nowadays, right? And our mythology, our legends, our stories, our history has such enormous amount of such incidences that have taken place. So it need not be painful, it need not be difficult for a woman, is what the rishis and the scientists and the self-revealed people believed. Swamiji believed the same thing, that menopausal change in a human body, in a woman's body, is a natural cycle for them to prepare themselves after the age of 50 or so, to not to reproduce. Okay, it's a set of hormonal changes. It's not a Kundalini change. It's not a life force change. Of course, any change, any disturbance, any rhythm change in the body does alter your microcosmic circuits, as you would like to probably know it as, or you would know it as. So when this circuit changes, and there is some amount of alteration in the balance of the Kundalini energy that happens, but that's quite common. That happens for a man too. So there's of course, this topic is dealt in detail in our high-level Sky workshop, and also during the Kayakalpa yoga workshop.
And then do you find in India that women on average tend to live longer than men?
Well, at least the statistics don't say so. So men do live a little longer than women. But that's, I think, entirely because for every birth for a woman is a rebirth for her. The amount of pain that she goes through, my wife often tells me, reminds me that, look here, I have born 3 children for you, and you better remember that every time it's been excruciatingly painful. Natural birth that she delivered the 3 children, but it was extremely painful for her. And she said, I forgot all that pain as soon as I saw the child. And perhaps it is extremely painful for the child too, but we don't remember it, because nature has created such a beautiful system where up to the age of 3, we seldom remember what goes on. But there need not be a complete loss of such vitality, and therefore longevity loss for a woman. I think, especially in India, it is. They are not just spiritually given less chances to develop. They're also there's heavy amount of demand on their time, on their bodies, on their mind. She has to take care of, in most cases, a joint family. Even if she's not in a joint family, there is demand on her by the husband, by the children. So naturally, you don't expect her to live longer than the men. But otherwise, if the society is conducive, society is more concerned and kind and compassionate, if we simply just make some minor changes for the women, I am very certain this ratio will change.
Quite a few years ago, when I first learned of Kaya Kalpa, it was a book that I read that was written by a devotee of an Indian guru, and the devotee spoke about this guru living to 185 years old, and at that age, he only looked about 50, 55 years old. Now, have you found that, now at the time, I couldn't find anything about Kaya Kalpa or where to learn it, but But have you found that this practice, people who have practiced this long time, how long are there any people who have lived to that age, is what my question is, I guess.
I do not know of anyone who has lived beyond 120 years. I think that the oldest that I have heard of was around 105. So, having said that, we have a research center, we have a research team headed by a very senior medical professional. And we just finished about 2 weeks ago a World Doctors Conference on Kayakalpa Yoga and Kundalini Yoga. And this year, this is I think the 7th or the 8th World Conference we are conducting. Every year we conduct this. We invite people from all over the world, particularly those who have been trained and following the Sky Yoga system by Sri Maharishi, our Guru. And of course, we invite people from various other knowledge bases and practices as well. So we had a few hundred people come and participate, real top experts from different fields and medical research. And I was also one of the speakers there, and I participated in listening to the whole lot of beautiful research that has been presented in that. My topic was more on the effect of Kundalini Yoga and Kayakalpa Yoga on genes, on really changing the core, the genetic center of the human being itself. So I presented a few the empirical studies that we have done, as well as a few research that we have derived from various other research from around the world. But there are people who have done core research on people, particularly practitioners who have been practicing for the last 30 years, 40 years since they learned Kayakalpa Yoga from Swamiji himself. So the research reveals to us, I must tell you this with a bit of a disclaimer that this has not been yet validated or accepted or presented in any forum in the worldwide. So this still remains a private research collected data that we have still assimilating it, analyzing it. Hopefully in the next year or so, we should be ready to publish it on the World Forum. But it clearly shows, even at the mitochondria level, people remain youthful. You know that mitochondria ages over a period of time, and the aging of that particular cell, the microcosmic element known to scientists in a cell is essentially irreversible process. But we have scientific data to prove to ourselves at this point of time. We're still collecting data to prove it to the rest of the medical community in the world and the scientific community in the world that a cell of a 80-year-old man can be as low as or as young as a 25-year-old man. Okay. Now we have about 25 million practitioners of Swamiji's system across the world, but still very small. The reason why I'm saying it's very small is out of the 25 million, we really don't have statistics on how many people are practicing this on a regular basis. So it requires someone to practice in the morning, practice in the evening, practice for 20, 30 years. So we have collected a sample of about 120, 100,000 people so far. But still that sample is very less because people haven't really, that list, people who have practiced for, let's say, 40 years, are just a handful, maybe 20 people, 30 people. And that's not enough of a sample for us to prove. Maybe another 20, 30 years of consistent research can bring about this thing. But it's true that the scientific research has revealed to us that even at the cell level, people can remain youthful.
Now, one of the ways that I've seen aging measured in the United States and the research here is telomere length. Now, do you have any research into whether these practices increase the length of telomeres?
We have begun that research very recently because we just about 10 years or so since we have been doing very serious, sincere research on this topic. So to confess the truth, I don't have any medical proof at this point of time to present to you. So hopefully the next time we talk, I should be able to collate some of that and we should be able to talk. Yes, but we are doing some research on the telomere. Yes.
Now, does it matter? You've mentioned earlier that about the age of 14 is when the sexual vital fluid descends to the sexual organs. Is it necessary that somebody should be practicing these techniques at that young age in order to have indefinite longevity, or as you said, choose how long you want to live? Or can someone start that practice much later in life and still reverse their aging and have the same options?
Well, I think the question is actually, I would like to answer it in two parts. Part one is when the fluid starts to descend from the cerebrospinal area to the section, there is an urge for a normal human being, in this case an adolescent child, to want to excrete it. Now that urge is the sexual urge. You may have heard that in India, particularly in the Hinduism, we have a series of disciplined practices for a person of the age of 14, 13 or so, to the age of, say, around 19, 20, till such time the person gets married, that is. And such an age is called brahmacharya age. So there is a series of disciplined practices, which is which is part of the brahmacharya period, which has been prescribed by various gurus, the religious as well as the spiritual gurus in this country. The reason why that was given as a discipline was because the sexual fluid, even though it is formed in excess from the age of 14 and it does descend, and it creates the sexual urge for that particular fluid to come out of the body, it is not in excess enough for it to be wasted. So therefore, in order to control the urge between the age of 14 to 21, that young man or a woman is taught certain disciplinary practices. And these practices include certain types of chanting, certain types of rituals, certain types of disciplining the body, certain types of confining oneself to a room or a space for some parts of the day, reading scriptures, and so on and so forth. Some of these are taken very strictly in some of the schools, particularly the Vedic schools, the Sanskrit schools in India even today. Many children have gone through it. Many of us have gone through parts of this rigorous training at a very young age. So it's essential, therefore. It is believed in the Hinduism, it is believed in the Eastern philosophy, in Indian philosophy, that it is important that a child of 14 or 15 begins to discipline himself or herself before she's ready to get married. Okay. Now, post-marriage, after 21, to the age of, say, 40, there is excess fluid in the body that needs to be excreted in a disciplined, controlled manner. Therefore, there is this beautiful arrangement gifted to us by the society called as the husband and wife, the family system. So this needs to be respected by every individual, and therefore there was a marriage ceremony that took place in public. So there were several thousand people that were invited at times, and the marriage would take place over a period of 7 days, and people would take an oath to be loyal with each other, to each other, in front of these thousands of people, so that the society can keep them accountable. Okay, and they remain faithful and they remain loyal to each other up to the age of till they die, and that's the oath that they take. But up to the age of 40, they are allowed by the system to procreate, to give birth to a child. But after 40, the body does not produce excess vital fluid to be excreted from the body. So till the age of 80, the amount of excess fluid that the body produces comes down drastically. It comes down from 41 to 60. It comes down slowly from 61 to 80. Drastically it comes down. So during that period, there are practices in our own system where the brahmacharya moves into grahastha from 21 to 40. So you become a family man. From 41 to 80, you slowly start handing over your responsibility to a younger son or a daughter, as the case may be, and allow them to take care of the family responsibilities. And that may take 10, 20 years. So by 50, 60, you retire. And then you go into vanaprastha, you go into a forest. I mean, literally doesn't mean that you have to go into the forest, but it really means that you have to go back to being the brahmacharya. You have to remain celibate. You have to remain disciplined in your practices, because at the age of 80, the body does not produce any excess vital fluid at all. It doesn't even produce any vital fluid. It doesn't loses its capacity to produce a vital fluid. So whatever is the quantum, whatever is the stock, whatever is the quality of the vital fluid that remains in your body at the age of 80, that's exactly what you would have till the age of 120. So it is believed that a normal human being cannot live beyond 120. So, so just to answer your question in short, there is this premarital time when the man and the woman is taught to discipline himself. In the post-marriage, there are the 3 stages that people have to discipline themselves over a period of time. So when they do that, they can live long, they can live healthily, they can live happily and peacefully. So that's the premise on which the entire system was built.
So is it possible then, so basically what you're saying is, well, let me back up a little bit. With regard to marriage, it sounds like, in the United States and many other Western countries, marriage is just part of the system and people just do it out of habit. But it sounds to me like in India, marriage came about as a means to exercise a certain amount of discipline to maintain vitality in a closed circle of the marriage. Am I understanding that correctly?
There are essentially 4 reasons in my mind why a marriage was prescribed in the philosophy of the Indian system. There may be more, but I would like to think of only 4 main important reasons. Then one is the physical reason. Now, it becomes extremely hard, particularly for a man, to remain a bachelor, remain a disciplined, celibate person throughout his life. So he needs a willing, supportive partner in his physical needs. So after all, it is a physical urge that a man gets to excrete the life for the fluid from the body. So that is to be done with moderation, with discipline, with care, with a willing and supportive partner only when she is ready. So this is something that has been taught at a very young age for many of us. When we were young, our grandparents would typically sit and educate us, okay, and you're going to get married, but then remember that the woman's body, woman's needs are a lot more important than you are, because she undergoes a lot of pain. So anybody, even a mother, would sit and educate us. Many mothers would do this to their sons in India. Even today they do that. And unfortunately, this tradition is kind of getting broken over a period of time. And that is why there are so many other pains and difficulties that have come. So first reason is for a man to have a willing, supportive partner in fulfilling the physical need. And therefore, the man has to respect a woman. She comes into, typically in India, a lady comes into a man's house practically as a saint, because she just gives up everything from her family. She gives up her environment. She gives up her parents. She gives up her possessions. She gives up her room. She gives up her friends. And then she has to come into the man's house and accept and abide by the rules of the house that she is married into. And she suddenly has to adjust herself with all new circumstances, get used to all the new procedures and things like that. And it can be pretty hard for a woman. So the man must be trained. He is being trained in many cases, and unfortunately, once again, this tradition of training a man before his marriage is being lost, is getting lost slowly. that needs to come back. And in our system, the Kaya Yoga system, we have these practices being taught to the children, taught to the boys. We catch them very young before they get married, and then we have premarital counseling and things like that, where we teach the boys Kayakalpa yoga, and in that we teach them to respect a woman's body and not to violate her physical needs without her consent, and so on and so forth. Now, in the process, there are 3 parameters that are taught as the basic parameters for a successful marriage. It's not just the physical comfort. It's not just the physical needs for which the man and the woman meets and gets married to. But it's also the mental compatibility, the mental togetherness, the mental growth, the mental cleansing, the mental maturity, and therefore there is intelligence, there is consciousness, everything that's developed in the process. So therefore the 3 basic mantras that Swamiji prescribed for any man and woman getting married is tolerance, adjustment, and sacrifice. The third important reason why the marriage needs to be done and needs to be successful is essentially for the both of them to work together for this society. Like it or not, many couples will have children. When they have children, it should not become a burden for the society. So the couple must work together. How are you to produce happy, good, healthy children if you are not harmonious, healthy, and peaceful with your wife? It's not going to be possible. So for social reasons, it is necessary for the couple to remain harmonious. The fourth and the most important reason, which kind of answers your question to a large extent, is there is a spiritual union. Swamiji believed and prescribed and taught us all that marriage is a divine workshop. It is for exchange of imprints, what we call the karmic imprints. There are 3 essential imprints of the parts of the hard disk that you may want to call it as, which is there as the genetic center for every human being. The first part is what we have inherited from the past. And the second is what we have put in this birth. And the third is what we have as a free will to change our future. So it's essentially prarabdha karma, sanchita karma, and akamiya karma. So these 3 karmic imprints exist within us, and some of these are things that we cannot handle in our lifetime. So therefore, divinity, the divine force, the almighty force, consciousness gives birth to a man and a compatible woman. Just imagine the planet is several million years old, and maybe the human race, the Homo sapien race itself, according to one anthropology study, is about 65,000 years old. Who knows how old we are as a race, but let's assume 65,000 years. It's a fairly a long time to look at statistical analysis. But still today, in spite of the earth having more than 6 billion people, there is a man for every woman. There is a woman for every man. About 99.99% or 99.5%, this is true. That's a fairly large statistical coincidence. Who maintains this coincidence? Who controls it? You are not. I am not. When I gave birth to, when we had my son, my 2 daughters, we did not choose them to be daughters and sons. I don't know who controls this. So sometimes this is it's beautiful. It's a miracle to observe this. So when this union of the body takes place between a man and a woman, there is exchange of imprints that takes place, particularly the so-called painful, sinful imprints that get exchanged between the 2 spirits. And because of this cleansing, there is a confusion, and then there is a contradiction, and the pain and the difficulty that the marriage itself goes through. Therefore, the tolerance, adjustment, and sacrifice comes into play. Without the tolerance, adjustment, sacrifice, such an exchange of sin imprints will end up in divorce in courts.
Now, there are some philosophies that believe that when you have sexual intercourse with someone that, especially for women, that there are, as you mentioned, I'm not sure if you're using the word imprint in the same way, but there are psychological, physical, spiritual, mental information that's exchanged, so that if you have multiple sexual partners, you may take on those qualities, those psychological predispositions, or even issues that other person has. And even I've seen in some scientific research that women actually still retain some of the genetic information of all the men that she has had sexual relationships with in the past. Now, have you, is this, I guess my question ultimately is, does it matter if somebody has a life partner that they are with and that they're sexually involved with, or is there any difference between that and having many partners, as in Western countries, which is pretty common?
So you apply the logic here. So clearly, anyone who is married, has been there with his wife or her husband for some years, will know that her own, internal system would have undergone quite a bit of change, sometimes radical change. Sometimes you begin to think like your life partner. You start to acquire characteristics that you did not born with. You were not born with. So it's clear that there is somewhere there is this genetic center imprint exchange that takes place, and therefore it has effect on the psychological part of it. Some of this may be purely psychological as well. I'm not denying that part, that you're just living with the same human being from morning to evening. So the way he speaks, the way he thinks, the way he behaves could have an impact on the lady in the house, like vice versa as well. But there is a clear genetic center exchange that takes place. The complete center doesn't move, but certain imprints exchange do take place. So therefore, it is prescribed in our system, and particularly through this Kaya Yoga system of Sri Vedatri Maharishi, that we must remain disciplined and faithful to our one chosen life partner. Having multiple partners can only corrupt your genetic center, and you end up carrying the sin imprints of people that you don't want to carry in your mind, in your system, because it's going to be very painful. And that's not the reason why we are born. We are born to cleanse our genetic center and to realize ourselves and to become one with the Almighty Source. And it is for this, reaching this blissful eternal state, that we are born. Why go carry sin imprints of all other people in the world?
Now, for individuals who may have had many sexual partners in their life, is there a way to cleanse themselves of that genetic information, or are they just stuck with that for their life at this point?
Well, the good news is that there are simple methods that our Guru Sri Vedatri Maharishi has taught to cleanse our genetic center of sin imprints or unwanted imprints. The process essentially is, maybe there are 3 stages or 3 ways of doing that. So the simplest one is to figure out what are the sin imprints that you are carrying in your mind. And many of the sin imprints could be things that you have hurt others in your lifetime, or others have hurt others, and therefore you have taken on the imprints to yourself. So find such people and go say sorry to them, apologize, and compensate them. That's the simplest way of neutralizing. Once the other person lets go of hurt that they are having, they actually forgives you from the bottom of their heart, then the sin imprint is released. Is first a belief that we have in our system. The second belief, the second method of doing this is essentially to focus your mind on your own life force and go to the theta level and to the delta level of the mental frequencies by focusing your mind on the entire universe and in the almighty fluid, all-pervasive, penetrative, dark fluid state. And you are able to be one with the almighty force. And in that state, it is possible for you to release these imprints in that stage. And the third, of course, and there are certain imprints that could be there in the body. For instance, disease. As long as you have a disease, you can be damn sure that you have a sin imprint within yourself. You have some sort of a microcosmic circuit which is not in harmony with certain part of the body. Now, it is possible for us to reprogram the microcosmic circuit and release the old circuit from the body through simple methods of meditation, exercises, dietary program, mental thought patterns, particularly through the methods of superimposition, through autosuggestion and introspection. So on and so forth. These are techniques that are taught in our Sky Yoga system. So essentially, it goes back to the same 4 techniques of meditating on your own life force, which is Kundalini Yoga, and simplified physical exercises, introspection through the power of autosuggestion, superimposition, sublimation, and expiation of sin imprints. And the 4th method is Kaya Kalpa Yoga.
Now, I hear a lot of times when couples are together for a while that people comment that they look alike. Is that maybe attributed to that sharing of that the imprints between each other?
Well, I haven't heard of any such thing. People look alike. So I think that's a bit of a overstretch of an imagination, because the body structure pretty much gets formed by the time the child is formed. There is a signature that the child is born with. Unless something drastic as an accident or anything like that happens, the body structure doesn't change. So therefore, it's difficult for the person to look alike, but they can behave alike. They can think alike. They can talk alike. They can act alike. Those are things that are quite possible. Once again, there is clearly there are exchange of imprints that happens, but also psychological effects of having lived together with a person.
Now, during sexual exchange, when the sexual vital fluid is passed from the man to the woman, is the woman gaining that sexual vitality from the man at that point? And so does the sexual activity with a partner increase a woman's lifespan?
Well, there is very little research on this topic as such. Having said that, remember this fluid is more in an energy form rather than in a physical form. So this energy exchange happens even without an intercourse of sorts, even with a shake hands, even with just 2 people being in the same room. These ethereal particles, these energy particles can exchange. See, why does this exchange take place? Very simple, very simple. If you just apply logic, you'll understand this. The earth is spinning at about 1,000 miles an hour. So this room, this computer, this entire thing that we have, the television behind you, you yourself, the table that you're sitting in, the chair that you're sitting, everything is spinning at about 1,000 miles an hour at this point of time. So when the earth is spinning at such high velocity, such high speeds, the lighter particles are indeed thrown away from the center of earth. Either energy particle being a lighter particle, we constantly lose some amount of energy particles from our body. However, the good news is there is atomic fission energy from the center of the earth. There is this cosmic energy from the different planets and the planetary objects, stars and other things in the universe. These are sending out cosmic rays and ethereal energy, and we absorb this energy within our body as well. So there is a constant give and take of this energy within ourselves. Each one of us is like a mobile phone, a cell phone tower. Okay, so we attract what we require, and we give out what we need to give out. So by focusing on just us, we could be exchanging life force particles between us, and this exchange is a lot more during the physical relationship between a husband and wife, and that exchange is 2-way. It's not just one way. The man absorbs the female energy, and the lady absorbs the male energy from her husband. And that doesn't really increase the vitality, because this is a transmuted form of an energy. It is not in the vital fluid state itself. It kind of transmutes itself into a biomagnetic energy. So when the biomagnetic energy gets absorbed in the body, it is believed that if you learn and if you practice the correct way of having a physical relationship between each other, it could even cure and heal diseases for the husband and wife. And that knowledge is unfortunately pretty much lost in the system. It's been passed on from one to another to one to another. Not many scriptures, not many books written on this topic. But they believe that the saints, the Siddhas, who lived in particularly Eastern countries like China and India, they practiced, they learned, and they mastered this art of healing themselves through a physical relationship. But that was done with extreme care and extreme discipline at certain times of the, only under extreme circumstances and so on and so forth. So the exchange doesn't really increase the longevity of the person, because both actually lose their fluid, which governs the longevity. So overindulgence, wrongly indulging, improper indulgence, or even completely not indulging in a physical relationship with each other, without a practice like a Kaya Kalpa yoga or discipline, yogic practices, can actually lead to a lot of medical complications, psychological complications, and therefore can lead to a lot of spiritual complications themselves.
So if I'm understanding correctly, you're saying that sexual vital fluid can be lost even without having any sort of sexual relationship with anybody, just simply energetically losing that fluid.
You probably know that today is the Festival of Lights, so there's Diwali in here, so firecrackers and bursting and things like that on the street, so sorry about that. So we don't lose the vital fluid during a normal course of the day. We lose some portion of your life force particles, which is really an energy particle that we lose, which is not the vital fluid that we lose. The vital fluid can only be lost when we have an excretion of sorts. So the excretion can happen during the sexual intercourse, or when we have a nightfall, when we have a wet dream or sorts in sleep, and it can even come out in some form of leakages during when we pass urine during the course of the day. So other than that, we don't lose our vital fluid as such. We do lose our ethereal particles, the energy particles from our body, which is different from the vital fluid.
Now, in India, there's been a long time practice of the drinking of urine for vitality. Is there any connection to that and the sexual vital fluid?
No, there is no connection to that.
Do you know, is there any scientific basis or any validity to that practice? Do you know?
I know a few people who have empirical evidence to prove that drinking one's own urine, auto-urine therapy as they call it, actually heal them of various diseases. But I don't think there is any scientifically acknowledged evidence that exists at this point.
You speak about how practicing Kayakalpa yoga hardens the sexual vital fluid. Can you explain the mechanics of what you mean by hardening?
Sure. So the fluid which gets formed in the cerebrospinal area, as it either weakens because of wrong mental or physical practices. For instance, if a person keeps watching pornography or imagines sexual activity, this fluid could thins, and then it could start to descend from the cerebrospinal area through the central nervous system to the reproductive organ, and then you get an urge to excrete it from your body. Okay, now through the practice of Kayakalpa yoga, particularly through two sets of practices called as the Ashwini Mudra and the Ojo's breath. Ojas is the vital fluid. Ojo's breath is essentially the breathing technique that recirculates the vital fluid from the reproductive gland to your cerebrospinal area, or particularly the pineal gland and the pituitary gland. As you start to use this technique of Ashwini Mudra, Ashwini is horse. A mudra is a practice done by a horse. If you look at a horse or any other cattle, during the course of the pregnancy, you will find that the cattle is often constricting the anal muscles and releasing it. So in the human body, there is a spot called as the perineum, which is essentially between the urinary passage and the anal passage. It's right at the center between the legs. And about a few inches above that particular muscle is where the vital fluid is believed to be accumulating over a period of time. That's where the sexual gland is. By constricting that, by compressing it and releasing it over a period of time through certain set of practices which we teach in the Kayakalpa yoga classes, there is a centrifugal force that gets formed within this fluid, and the vital portion of the fluid gets accumulated in the center, and the non-vital portion gets thrown away from the center of the sexual gland. And by following it up, following the Ashwini Mudra practice with the Ojo's breath, you then raise this vital portion of the fluid through the spine into the cerebrospinal area, into your pineal and the pituitary gland. And in the process, the fluid goes back to where it descended from. And as you keep practicing this over a period of time, and by combining it with a whole lot of disciplinary methods and with cooperation from your wife or husband, as the case may be that you are married to, you will be able to start increasing the quality and the quantity of the vital fluid in the cerebrospinal area. And it is believed that over a period of time, the ultimate end result of this process of strengthening the quality and the quantity of the vital fluid is solidification of this vital fluid in the cerebrospinal area. When in the spine, in the cerebrum area, in the pineal gland particularly, when this fluid becomes solid, then there is no death. You ultimately reach that state. And it is believed that there are people who have reached that state. I personally haven't met anyone who have reached the state, but I've heard so many stories, so many legends that talk about people who have lived beyond 200 years, 300 years, 400 years in this country, this beloved country of ours. But having said that, certainly the research into this and the practice into this, especially after our Guru Sri Vedatri Maharishi has simplified Kayakalpa yoga and teaching it through several centers that we have across the world, the research has shown that it is indeed beginning to have impact on the character, on the health, on the people have even overcome their genetic disorders such as diabetes and things like that. But it's still very young to conclude that yes, indeed, it is possible to solidify, and therefore everyone can live forever in life. So we're not yet there. I think another about 50, 100 years of these practices being spread across the world, and further research from the scientific community can perhaps throw a simple logical explanation to the world for them to follow.
Do you believe that simply practicing these techniques is enough to ultimately extend one's life indefinitely if they so choose, or is diet or lifestyle or environment in any way important? Does it matter what somebody eats, for example?
Well, absolutely. And there's no doubt that, there are several things that plays a significant role in your longevity and, in immunity and health. The first one is, no doubt it is food. We have to understand that we inherited this digestive system from monkeys. Okay, we have a similar system as that of the monkeys. The monkeys they eat fruits, they eat nuts, but we eat all kinds of things, right? we expect to digest it. We don't digest it, and therefore there's a whole lot of problems that we get associated with. So we have to try and understand that we have a first in, first out system. What we put first comes out first after digestion. So what we put in first must digest fast. For instance, for many societies, many countries, including in our country, in India, we like to eat fruits at the end of a meal. How sad can that become? Okay. The fruits are the fastest to digest. Most of the fruits that we eat digest within 20 minutes to 40 minutes, most of them. Okay. Now, let's take wheat, for instance, or let's take a millet, let's take rice, let's take vegetables. Some of the vegetables take a little longer, and pulses and grains and various other cooked food, milk-based products, for instance, take about 3 hours for it to digest, 2 hours for it to digest. So which one you should put first? Do you put something that digests more first or less first? It's just, even a child will tell you that the fruits have to be eaten first. If it can digest within 20 minutes, it will come out within 20 minutes. It should come out. Whatever is gone should go into the blood. The rest of it should actually, waste material should come out of the, somewhat of a feces. But then that's not how we eat. So the food plays a significant role. So we should know what to eat. We should know when to eat. We should know how to eat. Second is your work. Our body is designed for a specific set of work. If you understand all the professions in the world, the profession that you are practicing, the profession that I am practicing right now is not really suitable for mankind. 99% of the time we are in front of a computer, or we are talking to somebody over phone, or we are on the internet. That's not what we are designed to be with. We are designed to work with land, farm. We have to become farmers once again. But that's difficult for people like us who make a living out of doing something else. So we seldom use our legs and hands. And most of the time our legs are standing, some of the time our hands are lower. We seldom even raise our hands. So therefore we need to learn certain type of exercises, like the simplified exercises that our Swamiji is teaching, to recirculate the blood and the heat and the air circulation in the body through all parts of the body, to each and every cell in the body, so that we become healthy. So work plays a significant role in the way we live, and how long we live, and how healthy we live. The third most important thing is the rest. Well, about 2 weeks ago, I ran a workshop on Simplified Kundalini Yoga. We had about close to about 100 people who came and participated in the workshop from all over the country. And about, I think, 20% of the people don't even know how to sleep. And they have sleep-related problems. They told me that they can't sleep. They've never experienced deep sleep. They're always disturbed in their sleep. And I wouldn't be surprised if this is becoming a big reason for many diseases in the world. So rest plays a significant role. You can't overdo it. You can't underdo it. You have to do it properly. So moderation and discipline, without neglecting it, is necessary for you to control your health. The third reason. The fourth reason, I think, very importantly, your physical activity, physical relationship with your husband and wife. So overindulgence, wrongly indulging, improper use of sex can certainly have a significant impact on your mind, on your body, and on your life force and your spirit. And the fifth most important thing, I think, is your mind. Once your mind is disciplined and you know how to use your thought force in a correct manner, in a positive manner, for the health and the benefit and the peace for you and your family and your society and the world community, then I think you will be able to succeed. So all of these five have a significant role in the way you will live, and how long you will live, and how healthy you will live.
Why do you believe that your guru died at such a young age for practicing these techniques that extend life indefinitely? Is that because he started too late, or did he intend to leave at that time?
Well, so by the time he learned Kayakalpa yoga, he was close to 60 years old. So he was his lifelong quest to learn that. Okay. So that was one of the reasons why he could not really succeed in living much longer. Having said that, for the kind of toll that his body undertook when he was very young. Remember that he started working on a hand loom, very heavy physical labor that his body was put through as a child. That's really child labor. Today, there are a whole lot of people who will cry if you put a child to work like that. But those are days when, the child and the family had no other choice. The man was working, the child was working, the father would cry every day, his mother would cry every day that as a small boy, you were sitting and working and earning for us. But there was just such poverty that they had to go through such extreme difficulties at a very young age. And in spite of which, this man lived till about 96, 97 years old. So that goes to show that his practices, indeed, even though it started very late in his life, had a significant impact on his health. And of course, that is not to say that there is still, we are at very nascent stages now to prove the impact of Kayakalpa Yoga and Kundalini Yoga on human health and human longevity and life. Perhaps another 100 years of such practices and research needs to be done to prove it to the world that it is indeed possible to increase immunity and to withstand the aging process. Reversing the aging process is not possible, though you can withstand the aging process. But you can certainly try and postpone death to your wishes. But we have made a great beginning, I would think.
In a lot of ancient texts, it talks about, such as even in the Bible, individuals who live to 800-900 years old. Do you believe that those are just the result of practices like this that once existed but were lost in time?
I think so. Absolutely.
So now, do you think that using practices such as Kayakalpa or Kundalini helps an individual to be more successful in their material life, in the physical life, whether it be financial success or career success or just in general, to achieve a higher level of fulfillment? And along those lines, are the lower chakras in any way connected to manifesting in this physical dimension?
Well, today, your success is also governed by your material prosperity. So nobody can ignore this. The society expects us to work and to fulfill our duties by the society. But the society is so kind and compassionate. Even as we work and we fulfill our duties for the society, what is a duty, by the way? If you may permit a small digression on this, Swamiji used to beautifully define duty as what is due to the society by us. Till the age of maybe 23, 24, we were not earning on our own, we were depending on the society. So if you put a calculation on the amount of money that is due to the society, you will have to live maybe 2 lifetimes, 3 lifetimes working to repay the loan to the society. So in the process of repaying that due to the society is so grateful, so kind and compassionate that it compensates us. And he expects us to be adequately compensated. For that, the society expects us to adequately skilled to serve the society. When we do that, when we constantly acquire new skills, acquire new competencies, new talents, and we start to serve with the best of our abilities, we certainly get adequately compensated. Now, how do you do that? You do that by first training your brain to acquire new talents and new skills. That can only be possible if your brain is trained to work in a calmer alpha state of mind. Kundalini Yoga assures you that with practice, not 20 years of practice, with maybe just 2 to 3 weeks of practice, your brain will begin to work at the alpha level of frequency. And we have in fact thousands of case studies with EEG data, electroencephalogram data, to prove that our Sky Yoga system indeed helps people to remain active at the alpha level of frequency. So when you do that, your brain starts to acquire new skills, new methods, new techniques and starts to overcome the old habits, old patterns, old wrong, digression methods and so on and so forth that the brain is used to, and starts to form new neural networks in the brain. And this is being supported by, the Harvard research that came out very recently, that even the brain's gray matter gets, rebound, it regrows. The brain cells are the only cells that never grow again. Once they die, they just die. We have maybe around 6,500 crore neurons, 6.5 billion neuron cells in the brain, an average human brain. So if they die, they just die. They don't regrow. But the gray cells do regrow. Is the latest research about 10 years ago that came out of the Harvard University. So it is possible through meditation that the brain can be rewired. And the latest gene therapy, the genetic study also proves that meditation indeed helps to rewire the brain. So once you rewire the brain, you can acquire whatever you want to acquire in the materialistic life. But a Kundalini yogi, a spiritual practitioner, knows that if you accumulate a lot of wealth, that itself is the reason for your loss of peace. The more wealth you have, the less peace that you have. So a person who is spiritually inclined, spiritually growing, will have a clear understanding of how much money he will need in order to have a peaceful life. The rest of it, even if he acquires, he will distribute it back to the society.
There's a famous American author. He's no longer alive, but he, by the name of Napoleon Hill. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. He wrote a lot of books. One of the most popular called Think and Grow Rich. But one of his things that he researched was many highly successful, wealthy American men at the time. And he found that there were certain qualities that they all possessed. And one of the qualities that he ascribed to them was that what he called, they were all highly sexed. And when he was using the word sexed, he meant that they all had an immense sex drive, but they managed that sex drive by abstaining from or being more disciplined with their sex drive. And that sex drive that these men possessed was related to their ability to succeed in the world. So essentially, the sexual force is somehow connected to being able to be successful. And that's, do you find that there's any connection there?
Well, yes, I have indeed studied Think and Grow Rich. The words that he uses in that book very specifically uses one particular word called as transmuting the sexual energy into active mental energy. Now, that's exactly what Swamiji uses, but he uses in a slightly different context. He says that through the Kaya Kalpa Yoga, you can transmute the sexual energy into spiritual energy. Okay. It is clear, in fact, another page in this, another context in the same book that Napoleon Hill talks about why there is no successful man who is less than 50 years old. Okay, because they just spread their sexual energy so irresponsibly that they don't really succeed before the age of 50. So that may be true of 99% of the men and women in the world today. There are, of course, one or two exceptions that exist in the world. But most of the human beings don't succeed before the age of 50 because only at that time the man becomes to realize that, okay, this is what is actually giving me the spiritual energy to go and conquer the world. And they conserve this energy and they start to succeed in their life after the age of 50 maybe.
Tell me about the practice of Kundalini Yoga, or I'm sorry, Kayakalpa Kundalini. How much time, I think you touched on this earlier, if someone were to do it well, how much time do they need to dedicate to this practice every day?
It takes about a couple of days to learn this through introspection exercises, the sky level 1 exercises that we teach. We initiate you into the Ajna Chakra, Sahasrara chakra or the crown chakra, and also teach you how to safely bring it back to the root chakra or the Muladhara chakra. Now, after that, you only need to spend about 15 to 20 minutes in the morning and about 15 to 20 minutes in the evening. That would suffice.
And now I know that there you've got a number of centers around the world. Why is it necessary that this is taught by a certified teacher as opposed to maybe just having videos or something like that?
Okay, so it's an important question. Now, the life force of a human being is centered in the three-dimensional center of that particular life form. So for a human being, it is around the tailbone of the human vertebra. Now, this energy, which is centered in around the tailbone, needs to be awakened, needs to be raised to the Agna chakra in between the eyebrows, and then later to the Sahasrara chakra, so that the brain can start to function at the alpha level of frequency, which helps you to superimpose your old neural networks with new neural networks. And the superimposition leads to sublimation and to expiation of unwanted habits and unnecessary imprints, harmful imprints from the system, which lays the foundation for self-realization. So it's really two different benefits, right? One combined with the other. You can't have one without the other. It's like horse and carriage. So you have to overcome the sin imprints, cleanse your genetic center, and then only the realization will remain with you. Otherwise, the self-realization is of no use whatsoever. For instance, if you realize yourself, you find that you are part of the fraction of the totality, and the fraction demands the totality supplies. And that's the secret of just existence, and providence provide, therefore it is providence. So you realize all of these truths, and you realize that you can work with it, and you can manipulate it, you can succeed with it, and so on and so forth. And suddenly you fall prey to vengeance, you fall prey to anger, you fall prey to stress and worries and immoral sexual passion and so on and so forth, and you lose it all. So therefore you need to learn to get rid of unwanted, unnecessary, harmful, painful actions, thoughts, words, and deeds, so that self-realization can happen. So the awakening process, when do we do it? Do we do it through long years of disciplining one's mind, 30 years, 40 years it might take, through pranayama technique, through transcendental methods, or through various other mantra techniques and tantra techniques and yantra techniques and so on and so forth. But that by the time you would be 60, 70 years old, what's the use of awakening yourself at the age of 70, 80 years old? You don't have the strength to even sit erect at that point of time. Your digestion power is weak, and your heart is weak, and your body is weak, and your muscles are weak, and you're not yet there to live long. You're just in the last phase of your life. So you need to learn to awaken this Kundalini at a very young age, 15 years. You're ready? How do you awaken it? You can only awaken with the simple touch of a trained, magnetized hand. So you too can become a teacher. How do you become a teacher? You finish 3 levels of Sky Yoga workshop, which is 2 days of each. So which will help you to start focusing on the theta level of frequency and the delta level of frequency. And you learn various introspection techniques. You learn the disciplining process, the cleansing process. You start learning that, you start practicing that. You would have remained in silence for a few days in between. So we teach you how to do all that. So once you're ready, then there's a God consciousness course, which is a 2-day course, which is called as the Brahmanyana course. So after that, there is a teacher's course. In the teacher's course, you are now ready to magnetize any part of your body. You close your eyes, you think of your hands will become energized, and your hands will become magnetized. So with your magnetized hand, the Kundalini force, the life force of the aspirant sitting in front of you, can be easily awakened and raised by your own magnetized hands. But this is not possible through an internet or a Skype call or a Zoom video like what we are doing today, because it requires the trained master to touch the tailbone of the aspirant and magnetically raise this like a real magnet, just raise it. And I would have done it for a few, maybe around 10, 12,000 students I have done in my life. And it's the most beautiful feeling that you can ever have. That experience is beautiful. It's blissful. Just imagine with the wave of your hand, you can help a student feel the life force of himself or herself within a few seconds in between the life force. And you know that is the start of the journey of consciousness for him. So that's the reason why you need a physical touch of a guru, and that's why we have these centers around the world.
No, there are not very many centers in the United States. There's not one in my area, for example. Is this teaching? Are you teaching individuals only in India, or are the training for teachers available at all centers?
We do have teaching, teachers course around the world, but it happens very rarely. The reason is, like you said, we don't have very many aspirants wanting to become teachers and train others in different parts of the world. So if you don't have one center near you, perhaps you can certainly consider becoming a teacher yourself. It's very easy to do. We have a set of senior professors who travel around the world. Right now we have about 3 or 4 sets of professors in various parts of the world. There's one in Netherlands. I know yesterday we got a call from him, training a set of people there to become teachers. So we are eager to travel anywhere in the world. We are very happy to come and train people to become teachers. So we just need more people to come forward. We have out of 65,000 or so teachers that we have, about I think 90% of them are from one single state in India, just Tamil Nadu. The rest of us are just a handful for the rest of the country in India. Very few people from around the world. We have an active center. We have several active centers in the Middle East, in UAE, the United Arab Emirates. We have quite a few centers in Sri Lanka. We have quite a few centers in Malaysia. We have quite a few centers in Singapore. We have a few centers in the United States, maybe around 20 centers, if I'm not in the United States. But it's a huge country, right? So as a landscape, it's about 3 times the size of India is. So we need so many more teachers. If we can accommodate about 50,000 teachers in India, we probably need about 150,000 teachers to accommodate people in the United States, and maybe a lot more. Even this 50,000 is not enough. We need at least about, I think, a couple of million people to teach to just one country. We have 1.2 billion people in the country. So we can certainly have more teachers. We have, in the last about 40 years or so, produced 65,000 teachers. It's been quietly developing. There has been no advertisement. There has been no newspaper coverage. There has been not a single, we don't have a marketing budget. Swamiji never believed in it. In fact, I remember once, about 30 years or so, 25 years or so, I was with him and I gave him this grand idea of how to market this whole thing and how to reach out to the world. And he quietly listened to me for about 20 minutes. Passionately, I was doing my marketing pitch to him. At the end of it, he looked at me and he calmly asked me only one question. He said, if someone in Washington, D.C. wants to learn Kundalini Yoga today because you are instigating him to learn, will you go there and teach him today? I told him, Swamiji, nobody in the world will think like you. And he explained to me, he said, why do you want to instigate others to come to me? You practice. You become a good human being. Let your family become peaceful and successful. Then you start talking about how you got benefited from the system. Let people come to you and then you tell them that I am successful because I learned this system. And this is more enduring. And this is evolution. This is more beautiful. This is long lasting. That's exactly the system that we follow. Therefore, our system is slow. It's not going to overnight come everywhere in the world, but it will come because people like us practice. We practice every day because we gain every day. We succeed every day. So therefore, it's part of our system, part of our culture, part of our DNA. We We can't live without doing this, practicing this. So then my family follows it, and people who see me and my family come to me, and I teach them. So I tell them the same message. I tell them that just don't go and market yourself all over the world. It's not going to happen like that. You have to practice. You have to train yourself. You have to succeed. People have to acknowledge that you have accomplished something in your life. You stand for something. You are consistent in what you do. People should respect you, and then people will come and learn this from you. So it's, for instance, I have been a teacher for 27 years. Now, I've been conducting these classes for so many years in so many different countries. I have conducted it. In India, I've been conducting it fairly regularly. But look, after 27 years, I started the YouTube channel last year. Now I have in my YouTube channel over about 46,000 followers. It has been watched by over about 1.8 million people across the world. And I have a discipline. I have a discipline that I will not go to bed without uploading at least one video which in relation with the topic of Swamiji's. Now that's my karma, that's my virtue. I want to do that. I want to do it every day. I've been doing it for the last about 400 days so far, about a little over a year and 2 months I've been doing that. Now the society respects me because I do this on a daily basis. Now, how many people can afford to do it? How many people have the facility and the approach to do it? I do this because society is paying me well enough. I don't depend on this for money. I don't do this on a commercial basis. And therefore, I'm doing this just to, spread the message, just to do a good work. Having said that, we need more and more volunteers. We need more and more teachers. And I'm very certain in the next about 20, 30, 40 years, you will not have to talk like this. You will say, I have a center, behind my house. I have a center to the left of my house. I have a center upstairs. That'll happen.
So the idea of Kundalini Yoga has proliferated quite a bit in Western countries such as the United States through other Indian gurus who have brought it to the West. How does your form of Kundalini Yoga differ from what's being taught most commonly?
Okay, so the first and the foremost is the raising of the Kundalini. Now, our system of Simplified Kundalini Yoga involves the raising of the Kundalini as the first process. Okay. In many other forms of Kundalini, it is an accident. It is an incident that happens over a period of time. Okay. For us, there is no accident or incident. It is the start. It is the first, within the first few seconds of an aspirant coming to us, we raise the Kundalini to the Ajna Chakra. The third eye awakening happens within a few minutes of the student coming and sitting in front of the teacher. The teacher touches the tailbone and then raises the Kundalini with their magnetized hand. So we have done it over about 25 million people across the world. Most of them, of course, in India, and that too, most of them in the south of India. So that's the step number one. The second step, which makes it even more powerful, is the raising of the Kundalini from the third eye, Ajna Chakra, pituitary gland, to the Sahasrara Chakra through the power of the eyes of the magnetized teacher. Okay, we magnetize our eyes and we pass this Kundalini Shakti from our eyes into the aspirant's eyes. We ask them to close their eyes and we touch the Sahasrara Chakra or the crown chakra, and the life force will start to get activated at the crown chakra, the head chakra. Now, that awakening is also a very simple, easy process, usually done within the first few days. In some cases, for instance, in my workshop, I do it in the second day of my workshop because people come from different parts of the world and I can't expect them to be with me for 15 days, 20 days. So earlier, it used to happen after years of practice, and people have to spend, years and years sacrificing a lot of their time and discipline for the sake of the Guru, and the Guru will then initiate it. For us, it's just a simple process. The third most important thing is to balance the spiritual energy with your physical energy. When your life force is operating at the Ajna Chakra and the Sahasrara Chakra, you absorb the life force particles, ether energy particles, and it remains an ether energy within your system. Therefore, your spiritual energy goes above your normal level. So that has a limited capacity in your body. You cannot store a huge amount and ever increasing amount of either energy particles in your body, because your body is not trained. Your battery has a limited capacity. So by the power and the use of a simple technique called as the Muladhara meditation or the Shanti meditation, where you meditate on your life force on your root chakra, which is initiated in the second day. In my case, I initiated in the first day itself. In the second part, the third part of different systems that we follow, longer versions or shorter version. We initiate you into the Shanti chakra meditation, the Muladhara chakra, the root chakra. We bring the life force back to the tailbone. When we do that, the spiritual energy gets transmuted into the biomagnetic energy. The biomagnetic energy determines the capacity of your battery to store more life force particles within yourself. So this Shanti meditation makes the Simplified Kundalini Yoga the world's safest Kundalini Yoga. I don't think this meditation technique is there in any other form of yoga.
Do you find that there are, I started this conversation mentioning traditional Chinese medicine has some other philosophies relating to longevity, and one of their methods is using certain herbs to extend life. And in modern science, actually, there's been more validation for some of those herbs actually lengthening telomeres. Now, do you find that there are any benefits to certain Indian herbs to increase longevity or to assist in these practices?
There are scriptures, there are methods prescribed in particularly Ayurveda and Siddha medicine in India, which is believed to be the root of the Chinese herbal medicine system. The references talk about food habits, certain herbs, certain roots, certain leaves, certain flowers, certain natural products like honey, for instance, which could increase the quality and the quantity of the vital fluid in the body. Which, of course, as we know, at the end of this conversation, you will know that we are often referring to as the primary energy source, which determines your longevity in your life.
So now I know that you have a main center there in India. One of the things that I had trouble finding in the beginning was how to locate the different centers in other parts of the world, in particular, in my case, the United States. Where would someone go to find out more about your organization and how to find teachers in their area, or even to come to India to learn there?
I run a website personally. It's called simplifiedkundaliniyoga.com. You can go to that website and click on Worldwide Centers, which will take you to my parent site, Swamiji's site called vedatri.edu.in. So there you have all the centers listed with their telephone numbers and email IDs and names and addresses and maps and locations and routes to go to. So you will be able to do it. Otherwise, just go to simplifiedkundaliniyoga.com. You have my email IDs there. You have a contact button there. Just click. You have my Facebook link. You have my Twitter account, LinkedIn account. Just keep in touch with me and be happy to tell you where to go.
A lot of people of more spiritual mindset and awareness these days are finding it a bit discouraging to live in the world today with the status of things globally. Are you finding from your own experience and interaction with people around the world that we are evolving? And I imagine in a lot of Western understanding in ancient scriptures, they refer to this time as being a pivotal time in the awakening of consciousness. Are you seeing that or noticing that, or do you believe that that's actually occurring? And is that validated by any Indian scriptures that you're aware of?
Well, certainly, yes, of course. There has been not only an awakening of the intelligence. You can observe it by observing the children today. My children are a lot more intelligent than I am. They are tech savvy. They are They question a lot more. They don't accept any methods or any recommendations that easily without questioning why. So the very fact that they have the freedom and they take that freedom to question why, even those that have been recommended to them through scriptures or from their elders, is a fact that there is some sort of an intelligence awakening within the society. So which is great. This could be a psychological thing. This could be a social thing. This could be because there is information available across the net. But there's also been a spiritual awakening, because I think a lot of people in the last about 20 years, 30 years or so, particularly in our part of the world, in India, perhaps true of even the United States, where people went after money. Okay, if you look at the history of each country, if you look at Australia, for instance, people, convicts went there. People who stole money, killed people went there. They settled. They were imprisoned there, and the society grew up there. If you look at New Zealand, a lot of Christian missionaries went there to settle down. If you look at the United States, people went there as gold diggers. They saw prosperity. I think even today, a lot of people migrate from India or elsewhere in the world to the United States for prosperity, for getting money. But you look at your own country, you look at Australia, you look at New Zealand, you look at Singapore, you look at Hong Kong, you look at China, you look at any country, as Western country in the world or developed country in the world, everybody is now looking up to spiritualism as a way, as a means to find lasting happiness from within. They have realized that the secret of happiness, everlasting happiness, is inside them, within them. So they need to keep in touch. For that, they need to have inner travel. Having said that, perhaps because of the way people market themselves using the internet, today there is I will say people are money rich, but they are time poor, they are trust poor, they are spiritually poor, they are health poor, they are relationship poor. Now, people want to fill up these gaps. They are looking for solutions. And a lot of people are coming to us. Earlier we had, 10 centers. About 30 years ago, we became 100 centers, we became 1,000 centers. So today we're talking 2,500 centers across the world. We're talking 65,000 teachers. I remember going to a teachers training course in December 25th. Yes, it was a Christmas day, 1987, when I went and met my Guru Swamiji. We were 300 people learning to become teachers in the Simplified Kundalini Yoga. Now, I was 23 years old then when I became a teacher in Sky Yoga system. Now, today, we get at least about 3,000 applications every month for becoming teachers, okay, which is not bad. In my opinion, this itself shows that not only people want to learn and practice in order to become peaceful, in order to become healthy, people also want to spread the goodness in other people. That, to me, is the greatest deep test of consciousness awakening. Yes, there is certainly I can go on. There is people looking for better education system, better lifestyle, organic way of living, natural way of living, homeschooling, for instance, natural, chemical-free kind of dietary methods, even Medicare. People now realize that the best form of healing is to allow the body to heal by itself. So lots of people coming to India on medical tourism. This is something that we've never heard of about 30 years ago. So today we're talking about medical tourism, we're talking about spiritual tourism. Well, people are not just coming to have fun, but people are also trying to take things from here and propagate it elsewhere in their world, in their language, in their culture. So that's great. It's fantastic. Yes, I do see a lot of awakening, a lot of awareness that's being created in the last, particularly, I think, 10 or 15 years in the world.
Well, thank you for being on the show with me today. It's been a real pleasure having you and all the interesting things that you shared with us, with our audience today. So I'll be keeping in touch, and hopefully we can bring you out to the U.S. in the near future.
Thank you so much, Ethan, for having me on the show. And God bless you. May the Almighty shower you with good health, long life, enough wealth, peace, prosperity, fame, and wisdom. Be blessed by the divine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Wake and Empower TV with my special guest, Krish Murali Eswar. Join me next week as we speak with another incredible individual who's standing on the leading edge and changing the world.